Thank you very much for joining me, Dr. Birhan, CEO of the Addis Ababa Light Rail. It's lovely to finally meet you in person and to be in your side of the world where we'll get to have a look at the trains. Tell me a bit about the current status of the Addis Ababa Light Rail.
We started our operation in 2015, so we have been providing mass transport for the last 9 years. At that time, we have been started with 41 trains, but unfortunately, we didn't focus for the maintenance part. That's why now the number of operational trains is diminishing. Last year, it was around 13, but after a while, we try to maintain the operation as much as possible, and we make it now 16 trains. But still, we have more than half of the train is out of operation because of the lack of spare part and lack of some workshop to maintain the trains.
Let's say back in the day when you were at full operations with your 41 trains, you were doing quite well in terms of your passenger numbers. How many passengers were you transporting per annum?
Yeah, for the last 9 years, we provided service for the passengers around 240 million, like that, around that. Our maximum record of daily passengers is 120,000 passengers per day.
120,000 passengers per day?
Yeah. On average, we are delivering 50,000 passengers per day.
50,000 passengers per day. And that's at reduced service, I mean, 16 trains.
With 16 trains. Our design capacity was around 140,000 passengers per day.
So how are you getting back on track, excuse the pun, but what processes are you putting in place to get the light rail system back to standard? I saw a couple of weeks ago, I think it was the Ministry of Finance put together an agreement. I think it was an agreement with the Chinese in terms of the light rail. Is that progressing? What is the status?
You said that within this year, even the Prime Minister gives a focus for our operation, to recover our operation. So our Prime Minister was discussing with Chinese government, and we are searching for some kind of support from Chinese government. And the Chinese government sent us some kind of technical groups to visit our infrastructure and to search for what's the main problem of our infrastructure. So based on that, they have made some kind of research, and we have been discussed with them, and also from the local part, we have made some kind of group to make a research for that enhancement, so that I think in collaboration we will make some kind of improvement, and they will send us a technical group in next month, starting of the next month, and they have a kind of promise to enhance the operation. So we are in good phase now.
In terms of the expansion of the network, I know it's probably difficult to talk about expanding the network when you find yourselves in the position that you do. But if I recall, there was another phase to the light rail that was being considered for development.
When the project is started, the existing infrastructure was the first phase. There was a plan to extend the infrastructure to both directions in the second phase. And as I have an information, the existing infrastructure has 34 kilometers, and when the second phase is finished, it will be around 76, like that. But unfortunately, the second phase is not feasible still now.
So when you say it's not feasible?
Not actually, it's not feasible, but from the government side, I don't know the government's interest, but as I know, there is a second phase.
Just driving through the streets of Addis, there is definitely a need for that kind of metro light rail. There are a lot of people to move, and the traffic is terrible. An expanded light rail will really make that difference. What private sector participation are you looking for, and how would the private sector from around the world engage with you?
From the private sector part, if the private sector is involving with us to make an operation with us, that's very good. And also, if they can supply spare part, especially in our operation, the main problem is lack of spare part. Even the spare part is bought by foreign currency. That's the main problem. So the private sector, if they are engaging with us to supply the spare part, that's very supportive for us. And also if they are involved with operation, if they bring their own train, and if they operate on our truck system, that's very, very supportive for us and for the residents of the city. And also from the international private sector, as you know, our train system is electrified, so our system is environmentally friendly. So if they support us with spare part and with enhancement of our operation, it's very, very high support for the environment also. So we are seeking support from the international private sector as well as the local private sector in both technical support as well as in the budgeting system.
So when you talk about on the operations side, are you talking about somebody coming in to operate it? So from the ticketing to maintaining the trains to running the trains? Is that the kind of operation you're looking for?
You know, if someone brings his own train, we'll deliver him the space for the operation. So he can transport the passengers with his own trains.
So where I come from, we call that open access. So third-party open access. All right, so if that was the case, what is the state of your track? Is your track in good condition? Have you maintained it? Is it to standard? It's a standard gauge?
Standard gauge, and it's also double track. According to our infrastructure, somehow it is good. It has no any problem still. Okay. But when the operation is very high, it also requires some kind of maintenance, so we can maintain it.
And your team is equipped to maintain it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have some kind of lacks, especially in technical system, so we need some support from the Chinese government as well as from other railway companies.
All right, so if I understand correctly, you are engaging with the Chinese in terms of your current operations and your current rolling stock and the maintenance thereof to get what you had back up to specification to serve your customers. And then there is an opportunity for a private operator to come in and run on your network. Okay. I noticed here in Ethiopia, a bit like we have experienced in South Africa, a lot of power cuts. How does that impact your railway operations? Because it is an electric train.
In supply of power, we don't have any problem. But sometimes there is some technical failures. And we are trying to recover that day to day, so that now almost the technical issue about power system is good.
When you talk about the spare parts for your current trains, they are Chinese trains, so, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the supplier of your original trains, they don't make that model anymore. So, and because they're quite specific, the spares or components to those trains are quite specific to that make and model, how are you managing the spares for that system?
Our LRT model is working in China also.
Okay.
So we don't have any issue about the model issue. But the main issue is that, as I told you, for the last 9 years, we didn't give any focus on the maintenance. So that the demands of spare part for the last 9 years is very high, so the budget is very high, and the government can't support that budget because of the large amount of money. That's the main issue. If we get that budget, we can buy the spare parts directly from the Chinese manufacturers.
Have you also looked at the business case of leasing rolling stock? If you lease the trains...
For the private...
From a private operator, for example, or whoever had rolling stock to lease to you, you could rent the trains so that you could generate the revenue in order to fix the fleet that's not running.
Yeah, that may be another option to enhance our operation. But as you know, the mass transport of the city mass transport, especially LRTs, by itself, it can't stand with its revenue. So it needs some kind of subsidiary from the government or from the other organization. So if we lease a kind of train, we cannot afford the rental price by ourselves. So still we need some kind of subsidiary. Rather than leasing of the rolling stock or the train, it's better to maintain our train by ourselves.
The more people you move, the more revenue you're going to be generating, which means that you can take that revenue, fix your fleet, get back on track.
Yeah, but our operation cost is very high, and we are collecting a small amount of money from the residents. So we cannot stand by ourselves, by our revenue. That's the main problem, and it's also not our problem. As you know, in Europe also or in Asia like that, all the city transport is subsidized by the government. That's the main issue.
No, absolutely. I mean, passenger transport is notorious for not being profitable. However, it is not only a social good, but it encourages economic activity for the citizens, which in itself is of benefit to the government. If we had to talk about the plans in terms of the development for the second phase, I know it's been parked, but if there was money to bring that in, what kind of project would that look like? Would you do it as a PPP? Would you do it in the same way? How would you execute it?
If a PPP is, if we get a chance of PPP, that's very good for us and also for the government. But if we don't get the PPP modality, we will depend on the government, and the government, I think, the coming 5 years, he may have implemented that project. If that project is implemented, even the revenue is very high for us, and even we can accommodate more passengers. Because, now we are working with 34 kilometers, which is somehow short. But if we increase the length of the track, the passenger is also very high, and we will collect high amount of revenue. And also we can satisfy the demands of the residents also.
Out of curiosity, the cost of a trip on the train versus taxi or a bus, what's the difference?
For example, if we take a taxi, our cost is, the taxi's cost is 5 times of our. For example, for 17 kilometers, we are collecting 10 birr per person, but if we use the taxi, it will be around 50 birr, 50. Okay. So our is 5 times lower than the taxi.
And on the bus?
And on the bus, it's around 2 times lower than, 2,000 lower than. But starting from the coming months, we will have some kind of increment with our tariff.
Yes, you want to keep public transport as affordable as possible, but at the same time, we also need to run. Those capex and opex issues are quite real. So in terms of your planning, yes, you've got your rolling stock and fleet that you need to fix now, but are you also looking at buying new rolling stock?
Oh, yeah, we have, as I told you earlier, there was a committee to study about the problem of hilarity. So based on that study, there is around 20 additional trains will be bought in the coming years.
All right, in the coming years or in the coming year?
The coming years.
Okay.
We don't know exactly when it will be bought, because it needs some amount of money, a big amount of money, and the money is expected from the government or from the city municipal. So we don't know when we'll get that money.
Have you got an inkling of the time frame and how will you do the procurement process for that?
For the spare part, we already started the procurement.
Yes, I have seen that, John.
Yeah, for the spare part. But for the 20 new trains, it's just a kind of study. Right. No one decided to buy it. Okay. So we don't know when will it be bought.
What kind of technology have you put into your system? In the last couple of days with Peter Week, there's been a lot of talk about digitalization, and obviously in the rail space there's quite a lot of, or a number of solutions around preventative maintenance and digital monitoring of your systems. Have you got that in your system? Actually,
our system is digital. It's already digitalized, especially for the controlling of the train movement. Mm-hmm. It's already digitalized, and we are using ATP system, which is automatic train control system.
So that's on the signaling system.
Yeah, our movement is under signalization. The movement of the train to monitor the movement of the train. Mm-hmm. But coming to the maintenance system, as I told you, we have a kind of scarcity, especially for the workshop. Okay. So when we build a full workshop, we will digitalize that one also. That's our plan.
All right, so you'd have to, with your new workshop, you'd have to retrofit your current trains with condition-based monitoring systems for the components.
Yeah, it's part of the new workshop.
Okay, and what is the process around that?
For building the workshop, actually for the workshop, it's not only ours. Okay. There is also a kind of railway system which is going from here to Djibouti. Yes. And also there is another project from Awash Waldea to Makale. So for these three projects, we have to build one workshop. It's under study, so when the study is finished, I think we can build that one also.
All right. That would be interesting, and it would be interesting to know more about that when you get there, because there are a number of clever ways of doing depots that are system agnostics or OEM agnostic that can manage the rolling stock, and really clever ways of monitoring the trains out there and supply chain in the workshop.
We need an urgent support from the international private companies, especially who was focusing on the environmental protection system. Our system is environmental friendly, so if we get some support from the international private companies in budgeting and also enhancement of the LRT, we have some inputs for the environmental protection. So we need support from the international private companies.
Are you talking about the carbon credits and getting finance?
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to communicate with them still, but we are searching for them.
When you say you've got that urgent need, is there like specific things that you're looking for?
The specific things that we are looking for is that amount of money, supporting money to buy a spare part and to recover the whole trains to operation.
How much?
$7 million.
$7 million.
Yeah, $7 million. If we get $7 million, we can make all the trains back to operation.
What is the return on investment? Or are you trying to offset that on carbon credit?
Yeah, our return on investment is decreasing of carbon emission. Providing the transport system for the residents with a small amount of money, we will decrease the carbon emission.
So you want to sell your carbon. Okay. Have you already started that process in terms of analyzing the carbon reduction?
We are on the way to study that one also. It's just we have a beginning. We'll develop a report within 6 months like that. So we are on the way to start the analysis.